Hey guys, so today we're going to be doing stuff with the fuel system in the E36. I already have it mostly hooked up, but I need to connect the lines. We're going to use some cool fittings and stuff like that to do that. I'll also show you what's actually in the tank and how I stuck the pumps in there. I'm running a Walbro, it's maybe a GS380. Whatever it is, it's a 400 liter per hour pump, and it pretty much dropped right in the stock location. I then took the stock pump and I moved it over to the other side of the tank, and that pump is now pumping from one side of the saddle over to the other side of the saddle for the pickup on the 400 liter per hour tank. So that way it should get rid of the sloshing and fuel starving issues that you tend to have in an E36. So I'll show you guys what's up. Alright, so what we got going on here is you have a bunch of wiring, and what I'm trying to accomplish with all this is the fuel senders in the tank, they have a range of 0 to 250, and there's one in each side, so it's about 500 ohms. So I was able to find a bunch of gas gauges that were 0 to 250 ohms but reverse, so they're 0 when full, 250 when empty. So what I did is I forget the ohm ring of the resistor that's in parallel, but I took the two sending units, wired them up in series as they would be factory for the 500 ohms, put a resistor in to knock the rating down to be in the range of the gauge, and then installed a 0 to 250 gauge. So at a full tank, it reads completely empty and it works its way full. So it's backwards, but at least you have a gas gauge, which for the E36, a lot of people do super complicated things like they pass voltage through and then they get readout screens and they figure out the voltages for different fuel levels so that they get percentage readouts. I don't care that much. So this was kind of a easy way to do it. Then I'm also running a dedicated power and relay for the pump because you gotta have good power going in your fuel pump. And yeah, so that is what's going on here. Now I'm going to take the AN line and I'm just going to cut the AN line and put it onto the hose barb that's in there, which I don't know if you can see that well. But, so I'm going to take this and put it on that hose barb. And then I will do the same for the return line over here. So for cutting the AN lines, I like to use an angle grinder with a cutting blade. You can use a Dremel, which I find is actually, you have to use a Dremel if it's a smaller line, like an AN4. Even though they're pretty much the same thing, the angle grinder doesn't cut it the same way a Dremel with a cutting wheel does. For some reason, if you use the cutting wheel on a Dremel, you can put right in the fitting. Use this, you can't get in the fitting. But on something like an AN8, which is what these lines are, you can definitely cut it with the angle grinder. But I'm gonna put my muffs and goggles on because I always get stuff in my eyes and it sucks. And angle grinders are super loud. I actually don't know how all you other guys I see on YouTube pretty much never wear earmuffs when they're using angle grinders and stuff, which is crazy. But here we go. Alright, so got that nicely cut. Alright, so this side I still have like a cut off chunk of a hose on there. It has the stock BMW connector, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but I think they're an 8mm head. You can use a quarter on them. We'll see. This one's pretty rusted, but they're kind of all junk. I've had really bad luck with the BMW factory hose clamps on this car, and this is a pretty clean car. This came from Florida, but like Central Florida, not near the ocean or anything. And there's not really any rust on the whole car, but all these hose clamps are junk. So Okay, well, I just realized we're sitting out here and I've got my angle grinder right there. So I'm actually just going to cut off this hose clamp. It's always a good idea to shoot sparks when you're working on a gas tank in the back seat of a car. So keep that in mind when you're working on yours. I know there's not really any gas and that the holes are real small. I'm not worried about getting a spark inside my tank, but your mileage may vary. Okay, so before I left, I figured I would show you guys an actual drawing of what I did for the gas tank, because it's a really affordable, easy way to get away from the whole gas starvation issue. Ultimately, even if you want to do it on a stock system where you weren't running crazy boost or anything like that, but you were having fuel starvation issues, you could go to a junkyard and for probably 20 bucks or less, you could have a very easy solution to your fuel starvation issues. So here's what I'm doing. I have the motor and it's pumping back to the Walbro on one side and the stock fuel pump on the other side. Now, if you were to look inside the tank, here's what you have going on. So you can see the fuel is coming from the return line. It's going down into the bottom of the tank where there's a little like sock mesh filter, whatever, for the fuel pump. It's sucking up from the sock, which is right next to the return line dump, and it's pumping it up over into the side where the Walbro is. Now, in the stock BMW, right here's like a cut-off milk jug almost, and it's got some slats in the bottom, and it's kind of like a little storage to help with the fuel starvation issue. So the line comes from the outlet of the other pump, and it comes in, and I actually have it secured into that tub, so it's always pumping into the little reservoir for the Walbro. So it's almost like having a pump in a surge tank or a pump in a tank. And stock, what they do is they just run a hose over here that has a little like well, it's almost like one of those things where you shake it and the plunger moves, and it's got the siphon valve, so it's always creating a Venturi effect through it. But this setup will definitely work better. So just wanted to show you guys that, because pretty ingenious way to get away with having no fuel starvation issues. Anyways, that's all for today. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and see you next time.